Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody else, and welcome to this episode of Under Construction. I am your host, Ellis, otherwise known as Trainman, and this week we're probably going to be doing the thing. We're going to be doing the thing that I was talking about, that I was trying to avoid, and the reason that we have these two tracks parallel here. And you guys don't know what I'm talking about? Yes, you do. I'm talking about dual gauge. And I think the way we're going to do it is we have our tame track here, and then the other thing that we can get is this. We have a rails-only 56-pound track, and while it isn't ideal, it means that we can, hypothetically, whoops, not like that, we can make 3-rail dual-gauge track if we are very careful. And so that's actually what I intend to do. So you can see this, and this, look at that, look at, we've got 3-rail dual gauge track. Voila, it's done. Alright, mission accomplished, let's go home, put up the banner. No, of course not. We actually have to build this yard. So this is where my attention lies right now. Obviously, if I had worked on it, you'd be able to tell. So, you should know that I haven't. I haven't touched anything around here, actually. This embankment is now wide enough for like a dirt road or something, so maybe I'll add that. And it also means that we're going to have the ability to make a Y here. So one of the things that I want to try, I can't do that. One of the things that I want to check, rather, oh my god, let me place it. I'm not even clicking on it. Okay, that was needless. One of the things that I want to try here is seeing if these are 3 feet apart. I think they are. Because if so, that's great. So we'll actually make this right there. And we're going to string this across as the center rails. And the reason I'm doing this is so that we can have... Now, if you guys recall, I talked about the things that we have to have to make this area properly. To make this area match the area that we had in the Geiger Mountains. So, this is one of the first things that we need, and it's a Y. It's one of the simpler things that we need. And the Y is such that you can stay at it, and it's fun to stay at it. No, what I mean is the Y here is going to be partially on that bridge. Hopefully we won't really have to use it. I think I'm not going to have a roundhouse here, because we will have the Y for turning engines and equipment around. I think we'll just have an engine shed. I need to line these up as best possible so that the rails are right on top of one another. That isn't it. That ain't it, Chief. Alright, so if this starts to sort of come astray, we'll just have to add spline points to it. That doesn't help. That really didn't help. Okay, so let's not add the spline point to it. Although, no. Although if we have a bajillion spline points, then of course it's going to work fine. Nope. I want to follow the standard gauge with the narrow gauge. And so what we'll be doing is we'll be building the standard gauge, and then we'll be building the standard gauge, and then following that we'll be using the ground height tool to bring the standard gauge to where we want it to be. And then following that, we'll be laying the narrow gauge on top of it. That way we know they're going to be at the same height. The thing is, this is not 4 meter, or this is, I don't know how long the lengths of straight rail are, but they're a little bit too close for me. thing we could have done is got like a different rails only track and just, or like a singular rail. I'm not sure if that's a thing that we can have. I'm sure it must exist, right? It has to. Let me do that. And then that wasn't the right thing. Yeah, do that. And then we will get rid of the gradient on the other thing. So we do have a few comments this week. Now, for those of you who do not know, if you may be out of the loop for whatever reason, I answer the comments that I get on these episodes directly on the show, and usually it's the first or second time I read them. So you get like a genuine reaction out of me if you want one. Maybe that's not such a good idea. But anyway, that's what we do around here, so if you have any questions, comments about the show, about me, about the route, about anything else, about life, the universe, everything, feel free to let me know. Let me know what like your New Year's resolutions are, and if you failed them already. I've already kind of failed mine, but it's okay. There's no shame in that. Alright, this actually doesn't look... No, don't attach to that. So the reason I brought up the comments is because that just made me think of one. I just need to go find it, and then we can read it. Although I don't remember what it was that made me think of it now, so that's very unhelpful. Oh, you know what? This actually isn't great. I'm going to have to tear up the track that we placed last time. Again, that was kind of placeholder, so don't feel bad about that. It was just me experimenting. Making a good yard ladder is always kind of a pain. You know, you can get the hang of it, but even then, it can be a little difficult. Okay, so we're gonna have two tracks here, briefly, I guess. Yeah, because now I've already widened this. Or actually, what we'll do is we'll make a short, straight section here. And then attach to that. I don't want to... The other thing that we have to do is we have to make sure that as we're building this, we don't... or we still keep in mind what we have to do with this. And that all of the track that's part of the dual gauge is, in fact, rails only and then the standard gauge, because if not, it'll look kind of silly. I'm going to leave that there as a placeholder. Actually, here's what I'll do. Although this'll be very similar to what we had before. Let's see if I can put these spline points in a way that makes it look good. Sometimes real-life railroad looks really wonky, so it's fine if it kind of does, but you should not aspire to make it look really wonky. That's the thing. When you build railroads, you got to be a civil engineer. You gotta play that role. You got to put that cap on, and sometimes it's tough to think like that, and sometimes it's tough to just do that, especially if you want to see something else. Like, if, now, let me attach to that. If, yeah, why did that turn on? It's tough to do that, sometimes. No, turn off. I'm just gonna hard turn this thing off. Maybe it'll stop listening to me. There we go. This is narrow gauge. We can get away with some tighter curves, but I don't want it to look really dopey because of the limitations of the track. Yeah, look at that. This is... I don't know. Here's what we'll do, though. We'll make this one done with... Nope, wrong leg. Oh man, that doesn't look a mess at all. Oh, I'll have to find the happy medium with this. Okay, so that's a little bit intricate. I hope we don't have to do that for every one. I mean, originally we weren't going to have this. Oh, crap. I made that way too wide. Also, way too many spline points. You only really need a couple of them per turn. Obviously, that looks terrible, but that's the rough draft, so to speak. So what you do is now you straighten these out until you find something you like. Also, what's straightened? Are both of these? Yeah, they both were. I knew it. This, you do need them kind of close together because this is a little bit of a, what you might call a delicate situation. But if you want good curves, you're going to want only a couple of spline points. It's just the fact that we have this going on here makes it so that it's a little bit trickier to get those points where you want them to be. And I do want to spread this out a little bit more because we don't want to be challenging Baxter Pass every time something has to get on the Y. We don't want to have blind drivers just to take the Y. Although that is still pretty tight. Let's see. Let's get a K something. That's Westford and Brightford. Wait a minute. Oh, do I only have these? Oh, I have 491. You know what, that actually doesn't look bad with 491. It is narrow gauge. And that sure as hell isn't Morrow Castle. I guess we'll leave that like that. Okay, so we have a Y. The other thing is, so what we need is, we need a lot of stub tracks facing in that direction. Not this direction so much, because the lumber, if you recall, so the logs get put on here, and then they go this way, up the railroad, towards whatever the lumber mill was. And I'm not sure we had a name for these places. But if you guys remember what the names of the things were on the Geiger Mountains, say something. If you see something, say something. But yeah, that is what we're building. Oh, that's right. Here we go. Here's our first comment. Here's our great segue into the first comment. I clicked the wrong tab. Ah! Okay, Evan Games. Hello. With 5 questions. Oh, these are some good ones, too. I glanced at them. But the first one is the narrow gauge in Mason Valley a tribute to the Geiger Mountains? The short answer is yes. The long answer is no, because it is not a tribute to the Geiger Mountains. This is the Geiger Mountains. We're going to be building the entire route in the context of someone who knows how to make a route instead of me back then. Break that. Alright, move that for a second. So, I intend to build the entirety of the Geiger Mountains Railroad, sort of as it would be if I were to create it now, which is exactly what I'm doing. The only thing that is disappointing is the fact that I don't have a lot of my original notes and stuff like that. I distinctly remember throwing out the paper with the map of Geiger Mountains that I had originally drawn, because the thought had crossed my mind, you know, when am I ever going to need this again? I've already laid all the track. Like, I know where everything goes. There's no reason for me to keep this. Oh man, that was a mistake. Don't be like me. Keep all your documents. So, yeah, now I don't have that anymore, which is kind of a shame. Did I just attach those two? Yeah, I did. Gosh darn it, stop doing that. Stop doing that, idiot me. Although I need to replace that with rails only, but whatever. Okay, so move that to there. What side are we on here? Yeah, we're on this side. That's the other thing with dual gauge, is you've got to keep it on the right side of the track. You know, whichever side you pick, it's kind of silly to just swing back and forth at random. definitely happen, but... And the reason I'm doing this, this Y over the bridge is because there's really no other room for it. Down here, there's no other space for it. Otherwise, I would make it separately and we wouldn't have to do this dual gauge. Honestly, I'm not the... I love dual gauge, just in general. I think it's really cool. But I don't love making dual gauge, especially when you have to make it out of other things like this. I feel like this is... I don't know. I don't think gimmicky is the right word for it, but kind of silly. And it doesn't, there are ways that it could look better. And, those ways being, actual dual gauge track. But that isn't a thing. At least, well, it is, but there isn't any good new dual gauge track, and certainly not any dual gauge track with frogs or anything like that. That is something else. That's something completely different. No, not that one. Stop clicking on that one. There we go. Okay, so let me hook this up with the junction there. Let's put this here, and then let's swap out this. No. Although, actually, as previously noted, I do want to make this no ballast. Not rails only. Okay. Although I'm trying to line this up with the standard gauge track, and that's not helping with the standard gauge track isn't lined up with what we're doing. So let's get a spline point down to the standard gauge track. And let's bring it over to what we're doing here. Alright, that actually seems like it could be pretty good, although the switch itself is a little bit weird, but we'll just have to live with that, I think. One of the issues with doing dual gauge is things just come out kind of weird. At least that is pretty smooth. Yeah. Ah, the cat. The cat won't shut up. Alright, so now we need this. We need to string some track down this way. So, if we're looking at this, right, we have this. We need a narrow gauge yard, which... that's going to be an interesting thing to deal with just in and of itself. We don't really need a standard gauge yard. Because all that's over there. The issue with this is, if you take a set of cars out of here and pull it into here, then your engine's going to be on the wrong end. Not that that really matters, but... so... what if then... okay, so I need a few things. We need a narrow gauge yard that mostly points that way. We have all this area to play with as a yard lead. We need... so there's this here. This lead I think I'm still going to use. This is going to stay mostly level. It's going to go around the outside of the yard. I think that's mostly level. Yeah, it is. Be quiet. I'm not sure if you can hear the damn cat. She won't be quiet. We need to take this... oh, that's right. We're not necessarily going to have a roundhouse, but we need at least an engine shed. I think having a roundhouse could be nice, but I'm just not sure if it's necessary. Yeah, so here's what we'll do, actually. This will be kind of... The word I'm looking for isn't busy, but it'll be designed so that a lot of things can go on at once, perhaps. And also we'll try to squeeze these two together. Whoops. Oh, come on. Just do what I need you to do for once. Straighten that out. Alright, so now we have some tracks that we have a set of double tracks here, and one of them pretty much serves as kind of a yard lead. I also want this to serve as part of a yard ladder, so that we can sort of do what we had last time. We can have an engine house over here, which, let me find one that'll do what we need it to do. Two-stall brick engine house. I mean, this looks good enough, although this is standard gauge. Yeah, and if we attach that, it doesn't change. As nice as that looks, we cannot use that. Branch line engine house. Cute. Really cute, but the same sort of thing. Can't use it. Brick engine house. Pretty sure this is... No. EBT... Oh. I don't know why this stuff is so yellow. Oh! Wow, we could have really used this, but it only has one narrow gauge track. Oh well. We could use that. This is jointed rail, I know. Also, it's not an engine house. This is cool. Can you open the doors? Maybe the doors automatically open. Alright, let's see. What is this? 1880 engine house. That's really cool. We might have to use that somewhere else. White Pass and Yukon Bennett engine house. Okay, so we've got all these. Man, this Mount Union engine house would serve us really well. Here. But I think we're going to want to use this, although maybe this would be better at the summit. Although, what do you need an engine house for at the summit? The thing with this is... This is for trains going up the hill that way. The thing is, though, we need to think about the circulation of goods on this map. Now, if I recall correctly, there was really no reason for a train to use this back way here to get around. Although I think I have an idea. And this is another, like, Geiger Mountains Plus. Now, originally, the Geiger Mountains Railroad had a, it was a loop. It was a loop all the way around. And so this was the bottom of the loop, really. This was one of the stations at 0. And the loop went around this way, and it went by like a lake or something, which we had never established what it was. I don't think we ever painted it. And I couldn't get the textures to work in 06, or the water to work in 06. Oops. Didn't mean to do that. I couldn't get the water to work in 06, so you could not see the water. But, you know, there was supposed to be a body of water over here. There was a line that went and and looped over the track. It did this weird, like, double back thing where you actually crossed it twice. And then it went way out to the lumber mill. And then from there was a line that sort of went through a bunch of hills and got to the pulp mill. And the pulp mill was sort of attached to the back line. It was really tangled. And, you know, it's really interesting how that worked out. So what I will probably do, and what I probably should do, is have, well, more industries, more little towns to go to. But the goal is to just have all of the towns that we had previously. I want to maintain the loop, though. That's one of the things. I want to maintain the loop. But I don't know. There's an issue here. There's issues with sort of the sense here, which is why railroads that are just loops don't make a whole lot of sense. I do design my map sort of like that, though. So if we look at this, also let's move this over to here, so that I can move this over to here. I can see what's going on a little better. You know, the question is, what would be useful down here? There is supposed to be a long climb that leads out this way, and this way is pretty flat, and it leads to one of the other, or it leads to the main town. It leads to Lag City. The thing is, these are both going to be uphill. And until we know which, like, sort of what's going to be at the other end, because Lag City has an off-map connection. And Summit might as well. The summit of the Geiger Mountains. So, you know, if we look real quick at the map for, thing, let me see if I can pull this up, because I want to look at it now. There aren't too many branches around here that we could find. Although in this direction is... No, there isn't anything. There actually isn't anything in this direction. The VMR sort of goes like that, and that's it. The idea is that Lag City is going to have a VMR connection, and Summit, you know, God knows what's going to be in that direction. So it's entirely possible that this will run off into the middle of nowhere and to the coal mine, and then this will run down to the mill towns, and then, or, you know, this will run down to Lag City, which is like the bypass. And then there's the ones that go to the mill towns. Again, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but Geiger Mountains didn't make a whole lot of sense. So what I'm thinking is then we could use this building here, even though it's really, really yellow. And I know that I could use this, because there's only one person that makes buildings this yellow. And they're all the DLS. And so put that there. The question is, where do we put the log transfer? Because that's what's going on here. That's the main thing that's happening here. Logs and maybe a little bit of goods. Oops, and I opened this in paint.net instead of thing. I don't want to do that. Okay, so, but the other question is, how many engines do we need here? And would there be a lot of engines here? And I think the answer is yes. But there wouldn't be that many. So, this was originally down in Lag City. That's how we had it on the original Geiger Mountains, so we're not going to use this here, and we already established that we're not going to have a roundhouse. So the question is, do we use this? And I think the answer might be yes, because this is where a lot of the trains would be leaving for, you know, you'd take the logs from here, you'd take them up into the mountains, they would go to their places, and then they would get dropped off, basically back at Lag City, and then they would go in that direction. Which is an interesting way to do things, considering the logs are going to be coming from here, and they're going to be going to the VMR. The other thing, and I'm just thinking of this looking at the map, right? This means the Geiger Mountains, one of the things that we could do, although the Geiger Mountains would end up being a whole lot longer than we originally anticipated, is that it could meet with the Zion and Skyline somehow. And the Zion and Skyline is way out there. But if we manage to do that, then it would have a lot of purpose if there was some sort of deal where logs would come in here, up here, and then those products, or logs themselves, would be shipped out over the Zion and Skyline. That could make some sense. So, yeah, maybe we'll do that, maybe we won't do that, maybe we will. Having this connect to the Zion and Skyline might make a little bit of sense, and they would connect at the coal mine, which is going to be way out there. So that means this railroad is going to be a lot longer than the original Geiger Mountains, but I'm not doing it for kicks. I'm doing it because it makes sense. I'm doing it because there's only one way to really make this make sense, and that's what it is. So I'm going to get rid of that. We'll use that somewhere else, and we'll use this here because this is going to be a pretty major base of operations for the Geiger Mountains Railroad. Now the other thing that I want to do, aside from getting rid of this building, maybe we'll need it again later, is, so we've got our Y here, we've got the extent of our yard, effectively. We need 2 transfer points, at least 2. We need one that's logs, and so we need like a lumber yard thing. And we need one that's, goods, so a warehouse. Now, I'm thinking both of those can sort of be down in that direction. And we will rock you. Yeah, this direction probably doesn't have that great of a yard lead, if I'm gonna be honest. Also, the wrong pieces. Oh no, I just connected to the spline point instead of just above the spline point. I was gonna say the wrong piece is straightened, and then I realized that's not how that works. So we do have to make it so that this yard ladder actually makes a little bit of sense. So I have to sort of cant it up this way. One of the other things I should do is, if I run out of names, although again I don't remember what stuff on the Geiger Mountains Railroad was named. If you guys remember, please say something. But you'll probably have to say it again when the time comes that we're actually building the thing. So, obviously don't say it and then expect me to remember it and then just wipe it from your brain. Don't go looking for it now. But if you remember it, feel free to say something in the comments. And I'm sure I'm going to be derisive towards my past self for making stupid names, because I bet I did. The other thing is, if I run out of names, I could always pull from the Tamaros Vale and Anaconda if we're referencing old routes. Remember Galgora, Arturo, of course Tamaros. So, oops. Yeah, so I kind of want things to be parallel to this. Oh no! That would be a weird track arrangement. But honestly, what I want to do is keep these guys straight here. Yeah, because here we're probably going to have a lot of storage for things like empty log cars, flat cars in that case, coal hoppers, that sort of thing. This isn't where we meet with everything else. Maybe this is like our Mount Union, though. You know? This isn't where all the machinery and stuff is going on, but this is where a lot of our stuff is kept. You know what, I actually liked how that was angled before, so let's do that. I can hear the waterfalls very clearly from over here. It's kind of obnoxious. Yeah, this yard is going to have this nice bend to it. There we go. You know, if you've developed a strange bend, you should talk to your doctor. Alright, the other thing is, I think I'm going to add the same bend to this right here. Which means I'm going to be straightening that and that, which I assume they're both straightened now. Yes, except they're all straightened, so that's kind of an issue. Unstraighten. Oh, I guess that was straightened. Oh, you know what? I literally made things worse. Okay, so thing that I can do, right? I can break this off. Let's see, is that straightened right there? I don't think so, but I might be able to get away with it. Nope. Oh wait, that's the right one. No, 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 no. Oh no. What have I done? I want another spline point right there. And I want to straighten that. There we go. Not perfect, but worked alright. Okay. Right there. Probably. Get rid of the gradient on both of these so that they kind of snap to the same height. Let's pull this out this way. I'm trying to remember the diagrams of the mixed gauge, you know, the dual gauge yards that I had looked up between last episode and this episode. Here's the thing, though. This is, like, on the main thoroughfare of the yard now. At least if it's to be believed that the engine house is over here. The other thing is, we're about to run this into the side of a hill. So I should probably continue with the curve of the yard, or at least tie it back up. So what I think I'm going to do is this. Come on, add this line point. Add it. Put it there. There we go. Hopefully that, nope. Okay, so we need to start putting these all back together. Nice 3-point switch, never hurt anyone. Kinda wanted to fill all this with railroad tracks. The thing we could do is we could actually rebuild this so it fills out the area better. I don't want to do that, though. It's going to be a royal pain. It's going to be the Yeah, we don't even need tracks this long. We really don't. I can always make it like half the yard's abandoned. But I wanted to add some stub tracks here and then have these guys, you know, like, come together here. Because I wanted the yard lead really to be on that side. I just didn't pull these over far enough. Let's see. How can we rectify this? How can we make this work right? Well, if we use this middle area for stuff, because it's closer to our standard gauge here. If we have like our log transfer in here, hey, you know what? That should probably do it. We could get our log transfer in here, and that should probably do it. Except I'm building the wrong track. I need this. This will be like our yard thoroughfare, and not that. This. And then on this side, we'll actually have them merge in like that. That's a very rough version of it, but so is that. That was an unintentional rough version. I would call it a mistake, but I don't make those. Just kidding. You could probably make a great compilation of every time I screwed up on this show. We're like, what, 75 episodes in? I'm sure there are plenty of examples. Okay, so the thing is we're running into a hill here. That's the other issue. So, really, we shouldn't be going farther over than this. So that means I have to clear out all this. You know, we're making a valiant effort at doing that, but there happens to be a hill in the way that's not going to be very kind getting out of the way. And also, they wouldn't bother to do that. They wouldn't bother to get it out of the way. They would just let it sit there. They would go around it, like we're doing here. There we go. Thank you. Gosh, it can be so picky about where it wants to put a spline point because you've got another one nearby. Okay, so we need to have something. This is going to end up looking kind of weird, but we're going to make it work. That's my response to something in the Minecraft server. You know, if you do this way, it won't work. And I go, I'll make it work. I made it work. I kept my word. I made the thing work. Speaking of which, if you haven't been on the Minecraft server and checked out the new Panama station, go visit. It's cool. I spent a lot of time on it. And also, so speaking of Minecraft, right? I plan to make. So originally I was making the building podcast, that'd be my Monday show. I don't feel like doing a Monday video that I have to sit around and render out and stuff like that. Especially when the podcast will sometimes come up and it'll be like, oh, we gotta do this right now. You know, it's gonna overrule my early week videos. So what I think I'm gonna be doing now is I'm gonna be doing Minecraft streams every week instead of Minecraft videos. Or at least on the weeks that it's convenient. So yeah, I would like to do that. I would very much like to. Alright, let's do that. Right, we don't really want to have these guys this. We want one more spline point in there. I can't even tell if that's... whatever. It's good enough. It narrows it down to 1. That's totally good enough. The one thing that maybe I'll want to do, just to make this area a little bit more interesting and fun to work with, you guys know what that is. You guys know what fun is. Is to have something like this, where we've got a second track running alongside it. Because that's the thoroughfare. And it wouldn't be thorough or fair if I didn't include one. Badoomts. Thank you. I'm here every Thursday. Speaking of which, it is 117 today. It's Master Chief Day. Go play Halo or something. Obviously, when this comes out, it won't be that, because this doesn't even come out until Friday at the earliest, so... oh well. But you guys already know. I hope you guys went and played something. Or at least listen to the soundtracks or whatever. I know you're not all Halo fans, but you should be. So, you know. That's the other thing. I need to build a bit of a runaround for this, because, well, actually I'll just run around a train here and pull it in, you know, that way. I do have to pull this track all the way out to here, though. Back to where it was, basically. So we have our lumber yard here. And we have one more track that I have to do something with. And I still don't know where to put the engine house. That's the other issue. I want it somewhere where it's accessible from the Y. So like right there might work. Let's get rid of this extra. Yeah, so this is a pretty minor station for the standard gauge, but for the narrow gauge it's kind of a big deal, as you can see. Alright, so pull this back to here or something. Pull this back as well. There we go. Well, that keeps everything sort of aligned, more or less. So we're going to be getting general goods as well. That's the other thing that's going to come of this area. I think I'm going to string a second standard gauge line along the current one. So that we can have a runaround on this side of the river. We've got all this space, might as well use it. Now, where am I going to put this engine house, though? Alright, so it's one way in. So, part of me wants to, you know, well, keep it where it is, really, and run this across, and to, you know, to, like, back this in here. Whoops. Back it up some. Okay, so, like so. Oh, come on. Place the thing. There you go. Alright, also, we have more comments to get to, and I'm burning so much time. I apologize. So, Evan, I'll come back to the rest of your comments later, because I want to get the small ones out of the way first. Alistair Severin says, I've said it before and I'll say it again, the Titfield Thunderbolt is a great train movie. If you go back to, well, Alistair, I'm not sure if you were here for me talking about the Housatonic. I have been working on that a little bit lately, although it's not the lion's share of my time. But I find the Titfield Thunderbolt very cool. I just wish it had been done like 20 years later. You know, because right now it's a steam engine and a steam engine, and I would be so much more enthused with the movie just as a concept if it was a steam engine being or a diesel engine, and then they had to steal a steam engine to make the run. Obviously, a little bit harder to pull that off, but you know, I would still find that much more entertaining. But that's just me. Doesn't make it any worse of a movie. It's just not as cool to me. Brady Cure says, please drive some trains. Well, Brady, look no further than just a couple of episodes ago. Although you're going to have to go on the zombie train to do it. The zombie train is where I drive the trains. Although the zombie train normally is actually just a time-lapse of normal work on here on Tolbrand, while I discuss things from a, well, you can see if you watch the thing. I answer questions about the zombie train, which is a story that I put out many years ago, and is based off of Max Brooks' World War Z and the Zombie Survival Guide, particularly the Zombie Survival Guide, because World War Z wasn't out, I don't think, when I wrote that original story, or else I would have incorporated more things from it. Both the great books, very cool and realistic takes on, well, as realistic as a zombie apocalypse could be, but realistic takes on that subject. So I can't plug them enough. That's what the zombie train is, but if you go and watch video number 283, I believe, or 293 now, it's actually the AI fiddling around on this route here, because normally it's a route review, but I didn't have a Route 2 review, so we did this route instead. If you guys don't normally watch the zombie train, but you want to see some trains on the route, then go watch that episode, and be amazed. Or don't, up to you. What's the other question? Highball Productions says, are you putting ATLS in all of your crossings? Long answer, or short answer, no. Long answer, I am putting it on some of them. I'm putting it on the ones that need it. If it's a crossing that doesn't actually need ATLS, like I can sub in one of the non-ATLS crossings, like a Yarnish crossing or something like that. If I can sub one of those in, I'm more than happy to do it, because it makes things much less of a pain for me. Don't get me wrong, ATLS is really cool, and I've heard good things about TRC as well, but I haven't learned it. Yeah, don't get me wrong, it's cool, but it's really time-consuming, and I really don't care that much. It's the kind of thing where, you know, should I care a lot about it? Yeah, I should. But do I? No, not really. Anyway. We need some water. But the other thing is, there's supposed to be a passenger station over here somewhere. A little, like, up here. Oh, this looks weird. I've got a question for people that are more inclined with newer music. Is Portugal the Man a one-hit wonder? Do they have any other songs that anybody cares about other than Feel It Still? Like, aside from fans of them? Because I've never heard another song by Portugal the Man, and That song is stuck so far in my head right now. Even the postmodern jukebox version doesn't like drown out the original. And not that that's a bad thing. I actually think it's quite a good song. But wow, I can't stop. I can't stop. It won't get out of my head. Okay, so now we need to get this to cross the other thing. So we need the rail was slightly used. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, it's 35 pound. Okay. Go ballast. I think I'll just do that for now until we get to like here, at which point I'll just go with the regular 2 number 9s, all that jazz. But I want to loop this in right there. So now we need to make that look decent. Okay, now Ethan, now it's your time to shine. What's your favorite part of the route that you've built so far? Oh boy, that's a hard question to answer. It's got to be one of the scenic parts because I just love watching trains go through it. I don't know what size of part you're thinking about, although I do love olive, especially now that it's automated. Although the olive branch is a pain in the neck, so not my favorite part. The olive branch, at least. This part I really like, and I'm wondering how it's going to look when it's all set. Yeah, someplace up in the VMR, that bridge that is actually textured over there. I don't know. That's a really hard thing to... It's like picking from your children, except it's like pick your favorite part of your one child. I don't know, left hand maybe? But no, I don't know. Again, olive itself, maybe in terms of the way it looks, maybe just suburban olive, not even the railroad area, just suburbia, because I really do like how that came out. Railroad-wise, it has to be someplace along the VMR. Again, probably that bridge that I've done the texturing for. What else? What else? Must need my water. Hold on. If you don't know what bridge I mean, it's the one over the river over here. Yeah, this one. Which, for those who really don't know, I'll just zoom in on it. This is one of my favorite places on the route, just because it's particularly scenic. And we've got this cool bridge going on here, and it's already, you know, the texturing and stuff is already done. I really do like that. I do like this bridge. Even when it's totally surrounded by trees. What else? There's, what is it? Ashbury Ranch I really, really like. This might be one of my favorite little scenic areas that doesn't have, like, a really standout feature. It's just you've got the railroad and the road here together. I really, really like that. Aside from that, you know, there aren't too many places that are in the running because so much of the route isn't scenic yet. You know, some areas along here I think are really nice, but yeah, they can't stand up yet. They can't stand up to the other place yet. Although this is rapidly becoming one of my favorite areas, just because of the railroad nightmare that's going on here. You know what? push this in just a little bit. Oh wait, why is that? Why do we have another spline point here? There we go. Yeah, so we have that, we have this. We don't have engine servicing, that's what we need. And how about a little for the kids in the middle? How about a nice 3-point switch, huh? Yeah. Can't get away with a narrow gauge rail yard without one of those. Totally can, but you know what? I'm not going to let it happen. And you shouldn't either. What if I, okay, we need a water tank. Or a water tower. What's the best water tower to go here? Not that one. We'll have a place with those, with those yellow buildings somewhere, I'm sure. Russian water tower. I don't have any, DNRGW ones. Cold water tower, no. That's not what we're looking for. Actually, I already used that one in the immediate vicinity, so. Stone water tower, Spalding water tower, Russian water tower, rooftop water tower, Morris Park, building water tower, 1880 water tower, and I'm already using that. How about just, water tank? I'm hoping to get like a double-sided one. PRS standard steel water tank. Yeah, that doesn't help me because that goes with, other thing. This looks like it belongs on, thing. Although we could probably use a standpipe. DNRGW one, building water tank. No. I'm thinking of like the back-to-back ones. Which I thought was the coolest thing ever. Of course we can hear about it. So maybe I'll just use this one. I mean, it looks good enough. Yeah, I wanted to put it over, you know, basically put it here and then run the other track on the other side of it. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to fit it, but I wanted to do that. And I guess I'll put this here. Actually, no, I'll turn it around, I'll put it over here. This is where there's room for it. Not that there isn't room over there, but at least now it's not directly in the path of the engine house. Not that that's a bad thing, it's kind of a good thing to have, but... yeah, we still don't have a coaling facility with a lumberyard surrounded by railroad tracks. That's really it. I want to have some goods warehouses as well. Plus these. We still need to do the industries over here. I wonder what kind of gradient we'd need to connect this to that. Probably something ridiculous. Let's see what the straight line looks like. Alright. What's your favorite company on the map? Oh, that's a good one. Although I don't have enough companies yet. I mean, there's the Bend Over warehouse in Olive, but what probably takes the cake is the Olive Legitimate Business Company. Yes. It's totally legit. You can trust it. Trust me. It's legit. Okay, so here's something that I actually wanted to do from the get-go, which was to build this escape track almost, where it would have this wicked grade, this wicked steep grade, but it would be there as sort of like a back way to get into the yard. And I'm not totally certain if it's possible. But this is like your Cherry Hill. This is your sort of getaway. And I think I'm going to do the grading on this one pretty manually, because it won't come out properly if we do it with the tool. I'm sure it will if we figure our way around it. Yeah, don't ruin my narrative. I'm coming up with stuff left and right over here. Here we go. Like so. Okay, so we actually have a maximum grade of like 3.5, which on the whole isn't that bad. It's just not that good either. So I'm wondering, right? Who will stop the rain? Now, if I do this, if I put in a negative 3% grade, what is this going to come out to be? Alright, now we're doing the tool. Are we going to make it? I think we made it. Alright, what about like a negative 2.5? Or like a negative 2.8 or something? You know, what can we do to get it to be pretty much spot on? Because 3% is... Negative. 3% is pretty hefty. Alright. How about negative 2.5? I don't think that's going to do it. I think it's going to be worse than 2.5. But, you know, let's find out. It is worse than 2.5. It's probably like a solid 2.6 or 2.65, maybe 2.7 if you want to push. Let's try 2.63. Oddly specific, I know. Also, we are probably going to have to move some of these. You know what? 2.63. I just about did it. Alright, I like it. And then we could have actually... Well, no, we couldn't have, because this is way too high. But we could have built a Y over here, hypothetically. So we have a few industries over here that we want to do. I do want to do this one, even though it's kind of ridiculous, as you guys know, and by you guys I mean ICER specifically. Let's flatten this area out, just so it's a little bit more conducive of building some industries. A little bit more conducive to building some industries. And that's right, I wanted to put another dock over here, I think. This would be as far up as the ships can get. That's right, I built this swing bridge. Oh, did we get a new swing bridge? Okay. And then he asked, question number 4 from Evan Games. What's are you most excited about in Trains 2019? What is it that I'm most excited about in Trains 2019? The ground scatter, I think. Well, aside from the performance improvements, which I think are the most important thing, Ah, damn, I need a taller one. I need a taller one. I downloaded all the swing bridges ever, and I just hoped that there would be a taller one of these in this, but there isn't. Also, what is this one? Oh, this one has a road. Or it has railroad on it. I was really hoping that I was downloading more of those and not more of these. Well, that's really cool. But, wait a minute, let's see what we've got. Oh, that's really, really big. Oh my god. That doesn't seem possible at all. Let's see. What have we got? Show me what you got. We got this. I'm not sure you can actually fit a, thing on it. Also, the track is not invisible. Not sure you can fit a boat next to that. I like the bridge that we have. But also, why is the track not invisible? Oh, I get it. Because like this, it's... It's got a longer swing span. Oh wait, no. The track that we have here is only exists because it's not attached to the bridge, and the bridge is invisible track. Oh, I see. I assume what I'm gonna have to do is attach invisible track to it, and then it'll make that track invisible. Wow, that one goes quick. So that track is not actual track. And I'll bet you the bridge... Okay, the bridge probably closes on approach. I'm still favoriting the one that we have there right now. It's still my favorite one. Except for this, maybe. Although this maybe deserves a much larger channel. Bigger river. I like it, though. This is pretty cool, though it's very high up for some reason. Yeah, no, I think we're going to stick with the one that we have right now. I downloaded all the swing bridges ever, but... Oh, crap, I just deleted it. But we'll just have to build, like, cribs for it and stuff like that. Which one do we want? The brown one? The brown one looks... I think the white one looks better, but the brown one is a little bit more real. Or we can just put it here and make sure nobody looks under the water. Just say, nobody, don't look. Don't look at it. It's embarrassed. Oops, and I just moved it. Or I just raised it, lowered it instead of moved it. The other one was in such a good location, now I screwed it up. Need to get it to be the right height. And then we'll play with the ground to get it to be really right. When the time comes. So, now that I know we're going to stick with this bridge, though, I will attach the track to it. There we go. Okay. So we want this spline point right there. And to move these guys on top of the road again. On top of the road again. And so this will close when a train comes up to it, I would assume. Okay. So anyway. With these things, we have a crane. What is this crane doing here? We have this, which is the furniture factory, if I recall correctly. Right? Yeah, this is it's an appliance factory. Am I sure I want to have this here, actually? Also, what, I don't know if I have the right... Well, I could just do general goods, I suppose. Okay, so... I think we have most of our track work sorted. I have my back way in, that makes me happy. So how come this... At what point did I do that like an idiot? At what point did I build this with the wrong track? Oh my god, I'm stupid. Unless the game just bugged out and did that for me. I don't know. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Oh, we need to turn off the gradient. I don't know. Get rid of that. Let's replace this with the proper track. One segment at a time. Actually, 2 segments at a time. Or, well, every other segment. Oh, wait, that's it. It was just those segments. Stupid idiot, Ellis. There we go. Okay, now we fixed. Now it is fixed. Oh, you know what? This area needs to be kind of flattened, though, too, doesn't it? Because it's got some dips. I don't know how many cars I'm expecting to be pulling in here at once. Because, well, won't be that many. Oops. Oh, it's yeah, it's always on that side, that's right. Yeah, no, I'm gonna need to do some flattening over here, I think. Oh, whoops, that was right on top of the other spline point. It was so well aligned, I didn't even realize that it was not just a single spline point sitting there. So we're putting this back pretty much exactly the way it was. We're still doing dual gauge. Okay. And that's the way it is. Alright, we're also going to get rid of this, because we're going to actually put the, switch up here. We're obviously not going to use rails-only track for the switch, right? Yeah. Oh my god, idiot. Dumb idiot. Okay, and now I want these. No, I wanted to move it, not add, move. And the other thing is we have that ballast in there. It's so tedious to do. It wastes so much time to get rid of that ballast, to change the ballast out for what? You know, what are we getting out of that? It looks marginally better. Yeah, I'm not going to do it here. Yeah, I am. No, I'm not. Alright, we need another spline point on these. Oh, we need a lot of spline points for this one. I've got a feeling. Oh, whoops. Also, it has to be on the other side. Okay, now I'm going to do it. I wasn't going to earlier, but now I realize we have to be on the other side. So I'm going to change the track. There and there, I'm going to change it to gray milled, no ballast. There we go. And the edges of those two ballasts actually line up really, really well in that specific location. So I'm kind of happy about that change. Still need more spline points. You know, if we look for the areas that are farthest off, and then work on those first, it should be easier. Also, I spline pointed the wrong thing. Nope. Nope, 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 nope. There we go. You can tell which one updates when you do it. We're almost there. We have one spot that isn't lined up right. That's right here. Someday we'll click on the right thing the first time. We need to get gooder. But hey, now I can just putz around with narrow gauge engines. Not that I have anywhere to go with them, but you know, I can do it. The other thing is I want a spline point right there. Delete this stretch of track. Replace this with I almost called it ties only. It's not. There are rails. That's what those metal things are, for those who don't know. I have one more line here that I'm not really sure what to do with. Not add no ballast one to it, that's for sure. We'll add something over here. We could always add a switch here that actually attaches to that. No, but I think I'll do this and it'll run sort of down the middle of the lumber yard or whatever it is. Just so that when we add the multiple industry, there's more travel for trains. If I have a longer train, yeah, and then this is just this. And also we'll have this go like this, so that it stays in the lumberyard a little bit longer instead of veering off that way to go and do the loop. Again, so if we put the multiple industry back here, trains will be able to pull through basically all the way and then back up and then do their thing. Without blocking this. Okay. Interesting. Alright, we got that out of the way. I'm pretty happy. I'm content. Let's end the episode here. Just kidding. Just kidding. Anyway, so we've actually got one more we've got one more thingy. Bit of question, I think. Oh yeah, sorry, I never finished the question about 2019, I think. So it's the terrain scatter, it's the performance improvements are a big one. What else, though? What else off the top of my head? I mean, hopefully something that has to do with multiplayer surveyor or fixing multiplayer, that sort of thing. With, you know, whatever multiplayer enhancements are coming with 2019. Because that's something that I think a lot of people are excited for. In my personal experience, a lot of people are excited for it. And it could really set trains apart a lot more. Right now, trains is number one in what you can do creatively. with making and getting assets, the amount of freeware that's available for this game is ridiculous, and the fact that it's all available in game with with the content manager and the download station and stuff like that, that's pretty special. But there are other sims out there. Stop putting down the wrong track. There are other sims out there that have pretty robust multiplayer, and I'm thinking of like Open Rails specifically. And if we can find a way to get multiplayer to be as properly functional as Open Rails multiplayer is, or at least get it close, with the tools that we already have in trains, it could be a whole new ball game, a whole new world, a new fantastic point of view. So let's go over here. How are we going to hook up these industries? It's like a small scale of some really big rail yards that are out there. So yeah, I want to see more multiplayer stuff. That's what I want. I want to see pictures of multiplayer. Mashes fist on desk. But yeah, no, that's what I want. That's what I'm hoping for, specifically. It's on my wish list. Oh, Santa Claus. Australian Santa Claus. Is N3V still Australian? I know Aron is. I'm not sure if N3V is. Anyway. Aussie Claus. But anyway, that's 2019 in a nutshell. That's what I want. Gimme. So what's the last bit of question? Oh, this is a bombshell. I can't wait to discuss this. So recently, I've been thinking about what if the PRR, New York Central, and New Haven never merged and the PRR survived till today? What do you think would be different with American railroads today? See, that's a really interesting question, because you're going far enough back that you can really incur some pretty heavy butterfly effect. And for those who don't know what the butterfly effect is, it's the idea of something very small happening in the past that ends up having huge consequences down the road just because of simple cause and effect, where things just didn't line up right for, whatever. And there's, I think, a bad sci-fi movie about this too. Anyway, but I'm not sure if they got the term from somewhere else or if the term was coined there. I really hope it wasn't coined in that movie. I don't remember it being a good movie. Anyway, go watch it, make your own judgments. So, yeah, butterfly effect. A tiny thing, except this is not so tiny, but something in the past having huge and unanticipated and unanticipatable, indeed, consequences down the road. This is actually a really interesting one, because if we think about what Penn Central led into, so Penn Central was the Pennsylvania Railroad and the New York Central Railroad merging. These longtime rivals, these bitter rivals, really, merging and becoming one railroad, the Penn Central. And they went bankrupt in the span of a few years. They were failing basically 2 months into their existence. Now this, we can talk about why. Part of it was you had two railroads that, pretty effectively hated one another, and now you're asking them to work together. I don't know whose idea it was to actually do the merger in the first place, or why the ICC actually approved it, but nonetheless, it was done. The mistakes, they were made, and that was that. So you're left with this railroad that you have one side who is basically traditionalists. The Pennsylvania Railroad, they called themselves the standard railroad of the world, and they figured that everything they did was the best. I mean, then again, most railroads figured that everything they did was the best, but they took that to the extreme, and when diesel started coming around, they really waffled on what to do about that. They tried to cling to steam as best they could. They didn't buy like a standard fleet of diesels, which is sort of hypocritical if you think about it. But it was difficult for them to stay afloat when they now went from a railroad that was very, very heavily standardized and pretty much depended on its ability to mass produce spare parts for its engines. Mostly, in no small part because the engines that it had, virtually all of them were their own design or Baldwin's design, which Baldwin was in the Pennsylvania Railroad's back pocket as far as railroad stuff is concerned. But, sorry, I need a drink. But, yeah, Baldwin was their go-to. Baldwin was their dudes. Baldwin did pretty much all of their building, and they were so in sync. Like, this isn't direct evidence of it, but just to describe how in sync they were, when we say an engine was built by Juniata, we effectively say it was built by Baldwin. They were very hand in hand, step in step about their constructions, about the things that they were making. So, yeah, they had a lot going on. And also, I kind of want this warehouse again. This one. So I don't really want it. Where's that crane thing? Give me that back. So, yeah, not to get too far down this tangent about what the Pennsylvania Railroad is and isn't, but that was them. The New York Central, they were innovators. That's what made them really special. The Pennsy had a design from 1914 that they made several hundred of and stuck to until they basically couldn't anymore. The only reason the Pennsylvania was making money, the Pennsylvania Company, the company that owned the railroad, the only reason they were making money when Penn Central began is because they had a controlling interest in the Norfolk and Western, or, well, if not a controlling interest, they owned a lot of stock in the N&W. And the N&W, being a coal road, coal was still pretty good at that point in time, so the N&W was having no problems at all, really. And so the PRR was still making money because of that. The New York Central was holding on its own. The New York Central was making money on its own, but only barely. And it wasn't it wasn't robust, is what I should say. You would see that they really had to innovate in order to try and keep up with the times. They tried some pretty crazy stuff, like the Black Beetle, for example, the jet-powered Bud car. So, yeah, they were doing their best. Both railroads were doing what they knew, and they were both trying to succeed, but the New York Central had the upper hand, but the Pennsylvania you can't dismiss because they were just gigantic. And that's part of the reason they were having problems. The Pennsylvania was a huge railroad system. And it's impressive for being an East Coast railroad, basically, or an east side of the country. They weren't the Union Pacific. They didn't have these wide open spaces to run to, and yet they were just gargantuan. Also, they had a reputation for being really, really good. They were able to pay their dividend for like over 100 years, which I think is the longest paying dividend in the history of the U.S., if not the world, to this day. And so these two railroads, these two giants, decided to merge. Why have I not mentioned the New Haven yet? Well, because I've talked about the potential good place that the PRR and the New York Central were in at the beginning of the, when Penn Central started. Now, I am convinced that the New Haven was added to the Penn Central merger as a way of the Interstate Commerce Commission saying, you made a terrible decision, this is what you get for it. This is karma, basically. This is your punishment. You have to deal with these guys, the New Haven. The New Haven was not in a good place. The New Haven was really not in a good place because they had, basically, the head of the company, whose name escapes me. He's a particularly infamous name, however. The head of the company basically ran the railroad into the ground for his own interests. He embezzled money from the railroad. And he did that pretty much solely in order to, well, he embezzled money from the railroad. He took money out of the railroad, and he really didn't care about the railroad itself. There was a huge amount of corruption going on within the New Haven, plus the fact that the New Haven for a long time had been hemorrhaging money because of their policy of an absolute monopoly, and that's what they wanted. In New England, they wanted to have a monopoly on, on transportation. That includes streetcar lines, ship lines, rail lines, bus lines, everything. Everything. And they have been hemorrhaging money mostly because of the ferry lines thing. Because any old schmuck with a boat could start a ferry line. And of course things weren't getting better with the advent of buses and that sort of thing. So, yeah, so that was the New Haven. They were in a really, really bad place. And so, I mean, honestly, there was no saving them. You could have got the best businessman in the world unless you had managed to get the New Haven Railroad as a whole to decide to do, to do other things, to act differently, to have different goals. The New Haven would still have failed miserably. But it definitely didn't help that they were, they were getting their money stolen, effectively. So, with that in mind, we moved to Penn Central. Penn Central, you put these two railroads together, they hate each other. It doesn't work. Nobody's surprised because they hate each other. And then you throw the New Haven in there. The New Haven, the financial disaster known as the New Haven, really doesn't help anything. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about what had happened, what could have happened if they didn't get together. But let's just go a little bit further down this road. So you have the New Haven. You have these railroads. You put them together. They're a disaster. And then, in the wake of this massive disaster, Conrail comes along and solves all the problems. Yay, let's go home. Not really, but if we look at it through the lens of oversimplification, Penn Central was a disaster. They ruined a lot of things, and I'll talk about specifically what in a moment. At least one specific thing that I'd like to call out. And then Conrail came in and pretty much fixed that. But it fixed it by taking advantage of changes in regulation that, in effect, meant that that they didn't have to do all the things that once had to be done. So, yeah, make of that what you will. But that's that. That's what that was. That's what happened. You know what else I need for the narrow gauge? Coal. They had to get rid of a lot of lines that weren't profitable. They had to tear up a lot of track. They had to do a lot of pretty deplorable stuff when you look at how, sort of railroads are supposed to run, I suppose. And that, in the end, is the only thing that allowed them to stay afloat in any respect. So, yeah, that's them. Again, make of that what you will. That's Conrail. Conrail did what they had to do. Now, one of the things that we can think about is, if we didn't have the Penn Central, would we still have Conrail? And that's where the butterfly thing really starts, at least in my opinion, because yes, we would have Conrail, but we have no idea what sort of form Conrail would have taken. Conrail was built on the back of Penn Central in that they took this massive conglomerate, this massive railroad conglomerate that had failed miserably, and they made it, and they turned it into Conrail and then absorbed a whole bunch of other stuff into it. If the Penn Central hadn't happened, it stands to reason that Conrail would look completely different. That doesn't mean they wouldn't eventually do the same things, though. You know, that doesn't mean they wouldn't have the same outcome, effectively. So, yeah, it really leads me to wonder, you know, what would Conrail have looked like in the absence of Penn Central? You know, Conrail was sort of a last-ditch effort. As in, like, okay, we're pretty much screwed with these railroads. We need to make it so that they can, you know, make money again, and we need to make it so that there's a company that we can, you know, a specific company that we specifically can help. And that's what they being the U.S. federal government, did. And I sort of lost track of what I'm doing over here. I'm trying to add some sidings for coal, because I want there to be a coal drop-off over here. I just don't know how to get the rails over to it. You know, just for the barges, basically. I don't want it to be brought in on the standard gauge. I'd rather it be brought in on the narrow gauge. And yeah. Okay, you know what? I'm going to have to be awkward with it. Hold on. Let's undo a whole bunch of stuff. Although I do kind of want there to be a little yard over here. But it needs to be flattened first. Because I didn't notice how much of an uphill this was right here. So, yeah, I don't know. You'd have to speculate as to what Conrail would look like, and as to what railroads would be included in Conrail. Because some railroads were purposefully excluded from Conrail because they weren't doing that badly, and they wanted there to still be some competition. They didn't want Conrail, again, they being the U.S. government, they didn't want Conrail to be a monopoly, even though it was in certain areas. But that's neither here nor there. That you can't change. You're not going to conjure up other companies. So, what would have happened then? I don't know. Would the Pennsylvania have even been able to survive to this day is a question that crosses my mind, because, again, Conrail came in and saved the day. Conrail had to take over a lot of failing railroads and turn them into something, you know, worth using, worth any money, or just get rid of them entirely. As in, you know, some railroads were basically effectively wiped off the map because of Conrail, because of what they had to do. And again, I don't want to paint this in a light of, you know, terrible them. I don't want to be ragging on Conrail today. That said, I am totally okay with ragging on both the New Haven and the Penn Central today, because I still think Penn Central was one of the worst ideas that's ever happened in railroading. Full stop. And the reason that I think that, or one of the reasons I think that, is because they effectively killed the Bangor and Aroostook. And how do they do that, you might ask? Well, the Bangor and Aroostook made a lot of money off of potatoes from Maine. And you might not think much about where your potatoes come from, but if you're a model railroader, you've probably seen a million Bangor and Aroostook those red, white, and blue potato cars. Why did the Bangor and Aroostook have so many damn potato cars? Well, there was a deal made that during the summer, the Bangor and Aroostook potato cars, or the reefers, really, because these, in a lot of cases, these were shared reefers. These aren't the red, white, and blue cars necessarily. There were shared reefers that would be used for the Pacific Fruit Express in the summer months, and the potato trains in the winter months, or at least, in those harvest seasons. So now, if we look at this, all these potatoes came out of Maine. They went into Selkirk Yard, which was a New York Central yard, but now is, and at this point in history, is owned by the Penn Central. And they never left. They sat there until they rotted. And Penn Central did not have the money to pay for these potatoes that they had ruined. So a lot of the farmers didn't ever get the money, even though it wasn't their fault. And a lot of farms had to close down because of this potato disaster, which was 100% Penn Central's fault. And because of that, the Bangor and Aroostook lost a lot of their customers. A lot of potato farmers that shipped by rail vowed never to ship by rail again, and Bangor and Aroostook lost a lot of its revenue. You'd think, well, how much revenue can potatoes really be? But to an ailing railroad in that day and age, and the bar wasn't exactly ailing, but they weren't really making that great of money either. They weren't the New Haven or the D&H or whatever, but they were probably more akin to the New York Central. They were limping along, and that loss was a huge blow to them. So, that's why I don't like the Penn Central. And without the Penn Central, it's entirely possible that that situation would never have happened. And that means that it's entirely possible that the Bangor and Aroostook would have survived a lot longer, and so you'd have impacts, and these are the direct impacts I can think of. You'd have impacts regarding Gulford, where Gulford might not have been able to gobble up the bar so easily, and as a consequence, they may not have been able to grow as large as they did. And, sort of the consequence of that is that you might not see the conglomeration of railroads happening in northern New England as quickly as it did, or really even at all. You might see one of the other railroads taking power, maybe the Boston and Maine, maybe the Bangor and Aroostook, but you'd probably have those still as household names instead of Gulford, Pan Am. Just a weird thought. Anyway, but if we look at the railroads that exist today, only one of them is a quote-unquote household name from long ago, and that's the Union Pacific. The Union Pacific never left. Why? Because they're good at what they do. And because they were the toughest guy on the block. They took out all their neighbors. Now the question is, what could the Pennsylvania have done in order to remain the toughest guy on the block and not take out its neighbors without becoming Penn Central? And I think if you look at the way lines are divided today, and also if you take cues from sort of the mergers that people expected to happen at that point in time, which is like Pennsylvania Railroad and Norfolk and Western, you would have a situation that's not unlike CSX and NS today, and those names might well be New York Central and Pennsylvania Railroad. I don't think we'd see too much different, though. But that means it would have to survive Conrailing, and that really is something that I'm not sure the railroad would be able to do. I'm just not sure if it's feasible. I'm not sure if we look at it, would Conrail have been necessary? That's a big question. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Would Conrail have even been necessary if Penn Central hadn't happened, or even if Penn Central hadn't included the New Haven? Although then the question is, what the hell would have happened to the New Haven if it didn't get rolled into Penn Central and then eventually turned into Conrail? That's a really, really good question, I think, because the New Haven was destined for something. What's the opposite of greatness? That's what the New Haven was destined for. It was doomed. It was destined for disaster. And I'm amazed that it lasted as long as it did in the situation that it did. No, idiot. Wrong thing. We'll replace that in a second. There we go. That's going to be a coal drop-off for barges and stuff, and I'm not sure what this is going to be. Oh, you know what? This needs to be restrained. Oh, you know what? Actually, I wanted that to be, no. I wanted that to be rail only. Here. So, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I can't say one way or another what would have happened. But you just have to look at, when you start speculating, you have to look at the other pressures around the Penn Central at the time, because it's not a merger that happened in a vacuum, you know. There were other things going on around it that sort of made that merger what it was. Again, not the least of which being the New Haven being the New Haven. But also just the Pennsylvania Railroad and the New York Central being exactly who they were. It's the kind of thing where, you know, if you look at it and go, you know, they merged and it was a disaster, and then this happened and then that happened. Yeah, but why did they merge? What was it that made them feel like that, you know, that was the only thing that could be done? Like, that was the smartest decision. And what was the fallout of that, really? Not just the fact that you lost these two great names, but, you know, my question perhaps is, if you didn't have that, right? If you didn't have the Penn Central screwing up as hard and as fast as they did, you know, falling as fast and far as they did, you didn't have that, would you then, you know, how quickly would the government recognize that something needed to be done? Because the fact that something needed to be done was not something that was unique for the Penn Central. It's just something that the Penn Central, in failing as hard as they did, shoved into the spotlight. They thrust this they put a spotlight on the fact that, you know, the railroads are having a really, really hard time right now, and something should definitely be done about it. So then Conrail came about, the deregulation of railroads, the creation of Amtrak. All of these things exist because of the Penn Central, and, you know, they're direct consequences of it. And I don't know how things would have aligned in a situation where they didn't come around, where they didn't exist. Okay, what am I going to do with this? Because this looks kind of silly, I'm going to be honest. Or maybe I'll just leave it. The one thing we're still missing is the goods. Also lumber. But, boy, do we have enough of that. I don't know. It's so difficult to sort that out and to think about what could have been. You know, I can't not consider that railroads could have been in a much darker place because it would have taken a lot longer for it to be readily apparent that railroads were going to be in trouble. You know, that made it very clear that railroads were in trouble. Like, that made it extremely clear that there was a major issue. Oh, I'll use this. That had to be rectified sooner rather than later, in terms of how the railroads were and how they were operating, and that led immediately to Conrail and deregulation of railroads and Amtrak. So, how much longer do we figure that the passenger mandate would have existed? How much longer do we think that it could have been, or it would have remained as difficult as it was to abandon lines? You know, and how much would that have cost in terms of not just northeastern railroads, but railroads around the country? You know, what do we really think the impacts of that would have been? Did things really get that much worse overall because of Penn Central, or was Penn Central terrible but a wake-up call? I'm not sure if I've totally gotten off track from you know, so it's entirely possible we would have lost a lot more. You know, maybe we would have maintained one or two household names. Maybe we wouldn't know CSX and NS. We would know the Pennsylvania Railroad and the New York Central. But it's entirely possible that railroads would have been in a much worse position, or they would have ended up in a much worse position than what they got, than what they ended up in. So, yeah, this is totally silly. We need a way to redefine this. We need to redo this area. But we're getting there. We have a 3-foot gauge rail yard. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Wait a minute. Did we run out of time? We almost did. We're like 2 minutes away. I saw it, and my mind sort of went, oh yeah, we're done. Sorry. Don't enjoy the video yet. I need a little coal trestle or something here, because I want to load coal onto barges. Or maybe I just want a warehouse here. Can I stick another warehouse here? I could always shove this back more. I just need a place to transfer goods. From boxcar to boxcar. Now let's see. Let's see if we can get a double-sided warehouse. Whoops, wrong. That's totally the wrong thing. I need just a stout, small warehouse. Sugar Mill 01. That works. And we can have the road come up to it too if we build another bridge over here. Although we used this, didn't we, over here? Nobody will notice. Guys, don't say a word, I'll kill you. So should we have like dual gauge tracks here, or? It would give me an excuse to leave dual gauge on this line here, and so we wouldn't have this weird crossover here. But I don't like it, but I don't know if one way would be better than the other, exactly. We'd always just have the road come in here. Like, we're going to have a road come in here, and come into here. Let me do this real quick. Because we need to sort out the roads on this side of the river. Wow, this road's wider than I thought it was. Okay, never mind. We'll figure that out later. And also, it's supposed to come across like that. But yeah, I want a coal dock up here for the tugs. And I don't know what to do with this area. Maybe make this marshy. That could do. What did I write here? I didn't. It's just some splotches. Okay, anyway. We'll think about this a little bit more. But we have this, and I like this area. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you next week. Train Man out.